Well, this is one of the areas where you have this extraordinary gap between the private sector and the government, and why you can be an optimist in the long run once you get people in government who actually have the courage to be rational and to do what is obvious. Let me give you an example. How many of you have ever tracked a package on either UPS or FedEx to see where it was going? Raise your hand. Have you ever tracked a package? Okay. So we have technology that allows us, at the cost of shipping a package, to go online and find out where it is with remarkable accuracy. Right? This is not a theory. One of my proposals was that in order to find everybody who's here illegally, we send them a package. Now, you know, it's funny, but it's making a profound point about where we are. We're in a situation, I think we should be able to identify every person who gets emergency aid of any kind, and candidly, I think every state should sue the federal government every year for every penny that they have to spend for people who should not be in the United States, because it's the federal government's responsibility. Which is Obamacare, and if you go to my website, newt.org, and you look at the proposed 21st century contract with America, the first item in the contract is to follow Steve King's leadership and repeal Obamacare. So, I strongly support Paul Ryan's general approach to block granting Medicaid, and I would point out that Peter Ferrara has also developed a proposal on block granting all of the remaining welfare programs, which has a very similar effect of moving an integrated opportunity for states to deal with people who are poor across a whole range of areas using innovation and new approaches in a way that saves a lot of money. But I want to talk very briefly about Medicaid at a couple of levels. One is, and picking up on something that Herman has said, that is exactly right, and this is where we're going to have a real national debate. I don't believe you solve problems dealing with poverty under the liberal model that we've had for the last 40 or 50 years of people being helpless. Okay? Now, Marvin Olasky wrote a remarkable book called The Tragedy of American Compassion, which really helped define our welfare reform proposals in the 1990s. And I just want to suggest to you that we need to rethink Medicaid much the way we rethought the process of welfare reform. For example, Governor Jeb Bush, when he was governor of Florida, had a program where if you had diabetes or you had asthma and you took care of yourself, so you didn't need to go to the emergency room, you got a Christmas bonus because you had saved the state so much money by taking good care of yourself, that it was profitable to actually reward you for being a mature, responsible person. Now, that notion of linking behavior to reward, which turned out to be very effective with poor people because to the shock of academics, it turned out they were aware of money. But notice, I'll give you a classic example of how you save money in Medicare. Medicaid, rather. The number of people who walk into emergency rooms in order to get aspirin is an absurdity. If you simply had an ability to triage as they walked in, and if what they needed was an aspirin, they went to the equivalent of a minute clinic, and that cost $30 or $40, and the hospital wasn't charging you an emergency room visit for giving them aspirin, you save an immense amount of money. But if secondarily you start tracking that person's visits, and they're clearly abusing the system, there should be a point where there's a consequence for abusing the system. We have, and this is going to be very controversial, we have to start distinguishing between the taxpayer as being concerned for charitable care, and the taxpayer as being a sucker to be exploited. And that's a big difference in the current system. Let me answer at two levels. First of all, I think we ought to have genuine block grants, and that means if one state wants to try a voucher, it can try it. If another state wants to try something else, it can try it. Some state might decide to simply give doctors a tax credit for providing care for free, as long as the doctors documented the care, and that might turn out to be even cheaper than the current model. I think the whole purpose of giving back to the 50 states is to create 50 laboratories of experimentation, because we've proven decisively Washington can't fix this. Now, that's a reasonable step in the right direction. But let me also build on this idea of responsibility. You have to think of people as a complete person. I mean, we talk about Medicaid over here. We talk about education over here. As you mentioned, we talk about a job over here. I mean, these things all become integrated in one human being. We ought to be looking, for example, in public housing, about the notion that if we're going to provide you an opportunity to live in public housing, maybe you should have a role in cleaning it up and painting it and fixing it. So there's a whole range here, where we should start, and this will be a huge debate with the left. I mean, the left has this model in which everybody is weak, helpless, and stupid, but government will somehow take care of them, which always leads me to wonder, who do they think government hires? Where I think we probably do approach it differently. I would say from day one, if you don't sign up for a training program offered by a business that's trying to hire people, you don't get any money. And so I would connect the unemployed to the jobs. We have millions of jobs we can't fill in the country right now because we have an older workforce that isn't trained for the new kinds of jobs. We pay the older workforce to do nothing for 99 weeks while we're trying to figure out how to find the money to train people for the new jobs that we can't fill. And I would say from day one, you ought to go get trained, and your goal should be to get trained as fast as possible, to go out and get a full-time job, to begin to move back into the track, and then you wouldn't worry about how many weeks they were on it, because they'd have to do something every single day in order to get a penny.